Hi, welcome to the Soul Legacy TV podcast and radio show, The Soul Legacy Movement, with me, Iona Meade. I am your host and the founder of the Soul Legacy Academy.com. So I will be hosting today's episode and kicking off the first ever episode of the Soul Legacy TV podcast and radio show. So I call this episode Launching, Leading and Leaving Your Soul Legacy. So first up, I want to say thank you for joining me. I think it's fitting to give you a snapshot of how my journey has unfolded and why it is that you have been invited by the universe or your angels or your guides, my angels or my son, or your friends or family or my guests, even social media or Google. So first up, the title, Soul Legacy TV, podcast and radio show. So the energy of it kind of speaks for itself. But I kind of almost don't feel like I can take credit for it because it's something that I know was my soul calling and my soul agreement before I came to this earthly plane. And you might feel like that about your movement and your legacy. So let me break it down into the physical, make it more tangible, and share a little bit of the backstory. I won't go back to when I was born, but I'll go back to what was relevant to me being here and sitting in this space with you today. And I am going to try so hard not to cry during this episode because I want to get to the end. So in the title, you see TV, podcast, and radio show, right? I am someone who loves leverage and it kind of speaks for itself all in one fell swoop, right? I was like, oh my God, yes, I have to do this. So I've done this before. If you don't know me and you're new to me, I now know that when I did my event, it was called the #1 Divine Intervention virtual event, the Dive Social Summit for short. When I did my event, it was ahead of its time and it was ahead of my time. Now, I know in soul path alignment, like there's multiple ways to do things and things come up, but it was definitely, I feel now, it was ahead of my time and ahead of its time. Now, I was interviewing 49 who I call soul speakers, and they were sharing intuitive business, lifestyle, and marketing strategies for purpose-driven business owners. I did close to 100 interviews on that series. I didn't love interview. I still don't love interviews, meaning I don't love being on camera. I love the interviews, but I don't love being on camera. It's not like a natural thing to me, but I knew that that was a calling on my soul. Even my accent, I come from the UK and my hometown is somewhere called Leeds. And I have like that Melby accent going on. And trust me, it gets broader depending on who I'm around. And so I was like, gosh, have I really got to do this? Do I have to be visible? You want me to speak on stages? And my guests were like, well, I'm going to come and fly from the States and you're absolutely going to get on the stage with me. I haven't done that as yet, but I do plan to. So that event has been popping up in my Facebook news feed, you know, when it's so many years around. And it's been reminding me of the book that led up to that series. It was around about the same time. And I still have people viewing the page to the book that I co-authored in. It went to #1 on Amazon. I became a #1 bestseller, a co-author of a book called Empowered Women of Social Media. It was a collection of stories, really powerful, deep stories. And people were saying, oh my God, this is just amazing. Well, social media, I got a glimpse and an insight and got wind of how powerful it was. It felt like we were everywhere, literally everywhere on social media. So I shared my story back then called Rising Above Adversity. And I actually had thought that I'd hit my rock bottom and bounced back and I was holding my head high. And I talked about feeling emotionally, physically, intellectually, spiritually, financially bankrupt. And every adversity that myself and my children had been through would say, nah, we'll just put it in the book. We'll put it in the book. That was our way of just saying, this is a story that's unfolding. We're not going to take everything personally. We'll just put it in the book and share it. So I had gone through a really messy divorce. I'd actually got married on Cocoa Beach. And the year after, we bought our home. We had like soft top cars and holidays. And on the outside, it looked like a perfect life. On the inside, it felt like a lonely, empty mess. Now, I'd worked in childcare since I was 14, so that's what I was doing. I was working in childcare, I was working nights in a girls' children's home, and missing my family deeply, missing my kids. And so I awakened to coaching. I came across coaching and The Secret, and I was growing and I was evolving, and it didn't really go down very well. I'd helped my husband with his business and my ex-husband with his business, and his income had gone up and his prices had gone up, and I helped to position himself in the market by like 40% around that time. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know anything about business and marketing. I didn't know anything about the job that he was doing. He was doing roofs, a thatching business. And I ended up seeing homes in different places, and it expanded my mind of, what are these people doing? They're working from home, and what is it that they do? Like, kind of like what other half live like, right? And so I was working in that the girls' children's home. I came across coaching, transpiring through the relationship that I went through. We went through a messy divorce. It was time to part. We'd grown apart, and I ended up homeless. I had my home repossessed. Really long story. I didn't no longer had a home office to build my business from, and this is like a really snapshot version. And so I was in the homeless unit with my daughter, sharing a bed and away from my son. We lived there for like 6 months. I had to go get a job. I called it a soul sucking day job, but I know the lady and she's amazing. She employed my son and she employed me. And to pay for my room at the homeless place. And so while I was at that place, I actually went to look at T. Harv Eker. I looked up T. Harv Eker, and something told me, just look him up. I knew that he was in the States mostly then, but he was in London. Lo and behold, the universe had given me a sign. 4 weeks out from that time, he was going to be in London, or his event was going to be in London, I later learned. And so I bought cheap tickets, train tickets, and I stayed in a hostel because I'm not going to lie, I couldn't afford a hotel. And when I got to the hostel, like I'd gone from the homeless place on the train on my own, and I got to the hostel late at night, and it was worse than homeless place. I cried, but I stayed. And during that event, people were saying to me, I was open and honest and told them where I was and what I was doing. And they said, I can see you on that stage. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, no. I was reaching out, I can't remember how long, like maybe the year before, to training schools and associations. And I was saying, you know, this is what I've got, this is what, and they invited me to speak. And I didn't ever get back to them. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So just speaking online and being here with you is a really big, hairy deal. So eventually we got our home, and the company that I was working for had gone out of business, and I was back on what they call in the UK social security benefits again. For you in the UK, it will be government assistance. And so fast forward about a month after that, I had to declare my finances bankrupt. That's what I was advised to do. I was £160,000, pounds, not dollars, in debt when I went to the Millionaire Mind. And 4 days after, I'd loved my home to leave it, and 4 days after it was sold, because I was less in debt, but I had to declare my finances bankrupt. I decided to work on my business, not in my business, you might have heard that term, and on my book. And I had a program called the Prosperity Corner, And I was focusing on how do I figure this out? How do I make the transition from a poverty consciousness, which I obviously had, to a prosperity consciousness? And the book at the time was called The Prosperity Code, the A to Z keys to manifesting soul satisfying prosperity, because that was a big deal. Like where I was, that was a big deal. I wanted to figure that out. And I made a vow that when I did figure this out, I would share it far, wide, and deep, because at the time I was outpriced on the guru stuff. I was signing up for lists, but I was outpriced, right? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to move away and transition from the energy of list building to the energy of legacy building. Because when I needed it the most, I was outpriced. I was on a bunch of lists, and it keeps you in procrastination and it keeps you on the outer edge. Anyway, so I wanted to share it far, wide, and deep. So I went beyond the energy of list building in the book that I wrote that came to me, Empowered Women of Social Media. Like I say, we were everywhere. And like, books are a really great way to leave your legacy. And it so happened that I never really finished the book, The Prosperity Code. I figured out the code, but I never finished that book. But in the Empowered Women of Social Media, when I talked about, being physically and mentally and emotionally bankrupt, it so happens at that time, around the time that I was launching the event afterwards, that I actually signed up to another book collaboration. I didn't feature in that until now. And so that's a few years on. So I explained to the amazing lady that I'm going through some stuff right now. I won't be able to feature. Is that okay? And she said, absolutely. You can feature it later date. So over the years, it was years, I wasn't ready. And she kept reaching out to me. She's amazing. And I think it's about 2 years ago, a book kind of felt more aligned. It had the word soul in it. I noticed that everything I did had the word soul. So I had the Soul Speakers Academy. I had everything soul. And it fell through and I didn't end up featuring. So I was like, okay, this is the time. So the book that I'm co-authoring in now, with not 44 co-authors like the other book, is over 200 authors sharing in a book called 365 is Soulful Messages. It's a book series. They're on the 5th series of launching #1 best-selling books. They're about to retire that. But the book title is called The Right Guidance at the Right Time. I'm like, okay, so the universe is saying, I want to write your book. And so my book chapter, whereas before it was rising above adversity, now it's time to turn your wounds into wisdom. Now I got a call from, or a divine download or a sign at 13:33 on the day that I left my soul-sucking day job. And I looked up the mirror number, and it was my angel of faith saying, it's time. And my son was saying, it's time. It's time to turn your wounds into wisdom. And I'm here with you today. So fast forward, and the universe is saying, write your book, write your book. So I'm like, okay, I'll write my book. The book has been in the making for like over a year and a bit. So it's called The Intentional Living Codes. And no, the book has been in the making for longer than that, but the title of it and the structure of it has been about just over a year. I haven't put pen to paper really much, but I'll tell you that maybe another time, or I'll dive deep. It's called The Intentional Living Codes, and it's a book about igniting your light work, your lifestyle, and your worldwide cheers to financial freedom frequency. And for those of you who don't know what the cheers stands for, it's contribution freedom, health freedom, emotional freedom, right? Environmental freedom, your house goes, right? Your relationship freedom, spiritual freedom, and financial freedom. It was all of the things that I had craved, and I wanted to figure out about how do I get into vibrational alignment with this. So the book had come about for me taking my time offline. I literally, after my divine intervention virtual event, I didn't know that I would have the biggest divine intervention in my life, right? I was talking about, just having soul downloads, what have you. So I had gone through a time in my life that no mama ever wants to experience. And so I had my 40th birthday. I'd gone to the Caribbean. That's me with my son, Iona Meade. I have hot pants on there. He's like, Mom, you can't wear that. When I was doing the number one divine intervention virtual event, and this is an angel card, and I'll show you this in just a second, I got a phone call, and the bird is there. The bird's been with me all morning. I got a phone call to say that my son had had an accident and been knocked off his motorbike. And this feels quite surreal for me right now to share it, because I'm going back and forth, because it's just how it's coming up for me. And I was in service then. So the energy of being in service is something I was really big on. And so I was on a call and I noticed my phone kept going off. I was like, I'm present here. And I got off the call, and that call while I was in service, and my mobile had went, and it was my son's girlfriend. And she said, he's had an accident, like he's been knocked off his motorbike, there's helicopters. And I knew it was serious. And I was like, what do you mean? So I remember putting my coat on and just knowing that I needed to go and be with him. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I don't know. And I rang my mum, as you do. And my mum said, ring the emergency services. Because I was like, and I rang the emergency services, and I feel quite swimmy headed right now as I share this with you. And I will try not to cry. And not that crying is a bad thing, but I want to get to the end of the story, and I can feel my son's like, Mum, you're away, don't cry. And so I rang the emergency services, and the woman was quite jovial, and she's like, oh, I'll try and help you. And I was like, okay, cool. And she said, oh, I can't give you that. She came back on the phone, and her tone had changed. She said, I can't give you that information. I was like, what are you talking about? I need to get to my son. So when I got off the phone, I got another phone call from my son's girlfriend, and she said, Iona, he didn't make it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? Like, I swore quite a lot, and I said, in the words of, in a nutshell, I don't believe you. What the, don't say those things. And she said, I'd got the gist that actually she's quite upset, and this was real. I hit the floor, and the sound was piercing even to me, and my neighbor had heard me, which I didn't know at the time. And I rang my mum, and I told her, and she was with my auntie and her partner, and she said, I can't understand you. And I'm like screaming and crying. I don't know what I was doing. And she said, go and get the neighbor. Go and get the neighbor so I can understand, And we're in a panic and in a frenzy. And the neighbor comes in, and she sat with me until my daughter came home. And I had to tell my daughter that she wouldn't see her big brother anymore. And so I tell you that raw and real, because that has been the journey that I have been through, and the legacy that my son has left, and the story that I want to share with you and live. So his memory lives on, and his energy lives on. It lives on in me. So there I was at 40, spring in my step, thinking, I might have another 60 years in me yet. with my grandmother before before my birthday on her 100th birthday, thinking I might not have another 60 years. Like, what do I want? You know, what if I had these 6 years? What would I do? I'm 40 and I'm thinking, I'm at the middle of my life. What have I done? Where am I going? Then I have my granddaughter. Then my dad passes away. And hearing my dad, or seeing my dad and feeling my dad, and my nephew saying, Grandad, you can go now, was like, that's when I realized that we are souls. And had I not have been through that experience, I would not be speaking to you today. So the number one divine intervention virtual event, and I kind of swim in and out of this story because it's very surreal. This is, I think you'll be able to read it. It says, the divine director, and my son's hair wasn't ever really like that long. I was like, okay. I had a reading and she told me, he's my angel. This is the cards called Keepers of the Light, an angel card deck that I came across not long after. It's the divine director, intervention and purpose. Remember what my event was called, the number one divine intervention virtual event. Divine intervention is occurring. Know that you are being guided. Happiness is your purpose. And I was just like, I had no idea. So helping and healing myself through grief, turning my wounds into wisdom, wiping everybody out on social media. Literally, I went behind closed doors and I had to really start again. I had to start a message with my movement. I knew that I wanted to get my message out there, and I did that. I paused my event for about 7 weeks. I didn't worry about my business. I was in service. If you watch the testimonials from my Soul Speakers Academy one-on-one students, that is when I was in service the most. I just served my heart out. And I remember saying, I will take 20 years. It was 12 days before Daniel's 20th birthday. So this is when he was 18, 19, and he didn't make it to 20. Now I'm here writing my book, The Intentional Living Code. And so for those of you who don't know me, and don't know about raising your vibrational frequency, and you don't know about the lowest vibration on the emotional set point, one of them is grief. It's grief. And I was in that dark night for such a long time. And now I'm in the space of freedom. And so the transition and all that came in between has been the transition that I made offline. And so I'm big into repurposing. So everything that I did before, I'm doing again. And when I came across an interview as I was preparing for this today, I was actually writing the hashtags on my YouTube channel. And I went to look up the hashtags and my name popped up, and the number one divine intervention virtual event had popped up. But under an interview with a great friend of mine who, she's amazing. She had a loss of her son too. And around the Christmas time, we'd support each other. It's like, I'm not putting up my Christmas tree, I'm done. And then we put up our Christmas tree. Brenda Pierce, she interviewed me on how to attract your soul tribe. And so I happened to come across that yesterday. I hadn't seen it for years, listened to it. I didn't know what was going to be on that interview. And Barry and I were listening to it together. And I was basically saying back then what I'm saying now. And so when I say this message was ahead of its time and ahead of my time, when I listened to Brenda talking, I started to prepare for this message. And like when I was having the break of being online, I was listening to my guests. intuition, and she talks about birds and feathers and time. I have all of that, and a bird keeps coming this morning. So I had a break, and I scrolled through my phone, and I was going to listen to Think and Grow Rich, and I went to go click on it, and it disappeared. And I don't know if I've actually told this before. My head is swimming. I don't know if I've said it already in the beginning of this, because I did have a practice run earlier, but I scrolled through it and it went off on my phone. So I was like, okay. And then Esther Hicks, who I love Esther Hicks, I have a whole playlist on all of the freedoms: contribution freedom, health freedom, emotional freedom, relationship freedom, spiritual freedom, and financial freedom. I've categorized them for you. So I came across Esther Hicks, and I was like, it's this video, I think it's called Effortless Manifesting, which I watched, one of the first videos I watched years ago. And it has a blue curtain behind it, so I know it. And I'm like, this video has been following me around. I absolutely need to press play on it. Went to go press play, scrolled up, and it went. And I was like, oh. So I was on my phone, and I'm scrolling through, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I wanna watch this. And I thought, whoa, the universe has given me a sign. Sit into this space. You've just been like listening to divine intuition about science. So I was like, okay. So I saw a man on YouTube with his hand on his heart, spotlight on, blacked out, stood on stage talking. And the man was Gary Vee. And he talked about how to be successful on social media in 2019. Now, this was released 4 days prior. This was yesterday, so 5 days ago. And Gary Vee talks about, I'm just going to have a drink and say cheers to financial freedom. He talks about the success on social media and adding value. So I was like, I add value. We're moving from the energy of list building to the energy of soul legacy building. And then he said, if you're smart, then you'll start a podcast. I was like, amen to that. That's what's happening tomorrow. He said, if you're really smart, you'll record it. I'm like, amen to that. And this is what's happening tomorrow. And he said, and then you'll transcribe it. I was like, oh my goodness, because in the after show, that's what we'll do at the end of the season. And that's what I did in the Divine Intervention virtual event. I had my guests actually fill out their questions, so I'd have a transcription. This was like in 2013, 14. So he says, and invite guests and do Q&A. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my time. The time is now. It was ahead of its time. Gary Vee, if you know Gary Vee, I don't watch much of his stuff unless he's doing an interview, knows his stuff. What anybody ever says about him, he knows his stuff. And he knows that people have got a love-hate relationship with him. He knows his stuff. So I started a movement with my message and started the podcast and the Soul Legacy TV podcast and radio show. So if I've repeated myself at all, I just am in a daze with it. I have like a lot of notes to share with you, but what I want to do is say to you that I was offline. I wanted to help and heal myself. I've got the most amazing man in my life, and I'm so grateful. We had soul recognition, and it's through our relationship. I was tapping for the relationship. I was tapping for my financial freedom goals, and Barry has come into my life, and through going through the process of him sitting and saying, how do we create balance? Like, he wasn't living with me then, and now we live together and we have a beautiful blended family. But at the time, we'd both been through 2 long-term relationships that had prepared us for now. And we were like, we don't want to take this, we don't want to let this go to chance. So we wanted to create the life that we really wanted to live in all of those areas in the Cheers to Financial Freedom frequency. And so having him alongside this journey with me and co-creating all of this journey with me, I feel so blessed. And so If you are someone who wants to come along this journey with me, I'd be honored. If it's time for you to have a different conversation, I say change your tribe and change your vibe. I'd love to invite you into the after show and connect with the soul like minds that your soul craves. My soul's craving my soul partner. He's my soul partner in business and in life and in marketing. I just feel so blessed to have my path be aligned. And sometimes things happen and they don't feel aligned, or you lose your loved ones, and you're down on that emotional scale of grief and fear and all those things. And I want to help you move up the emotional scale to joy and love and freedom. Right? So if you join the after show, you'll never miss a show. So for me, I feel blessed to support soul guided entrepreneurs to maintain and manifest soul clients, their soul clients, soul client income, soul family, influence, and soul tribe impact. Everything I do has soul in it. I'm guided by my soul. We tap in and we tune into soul guidance, and we focus on starting a movement with your message from scratch and banking 50K in 50 days while tuning in and tracking your cheers to financial freedom frequency. I'm about financial freedom because I've had such deep contrast, so that we can launch, lead, and leave your soul legacy with ease, grace, and flow. It takes time and it takes money and it takes energy. And I'm good with that. When you've had the contrast of being at your rock bottom and being bankrupt, homeless, all that stuff. So as we transition from building a list, the industry norm, to building a legacy, as I write my book, I'm actually focusing on being in service first. As I was in service when my son made his transition, this is what I know my soul has called me to do. So I'm offering what I call 50 breakthrough sessions that serve. Right, I only have 10 spots in my program, so I'm really serving very deeply. I'm going to ask for a video testimonial in return. It's a challenge that I set my students. I'm gifting over $33,000 of VIP one-on-one big money energy breakthrough sessions and soul path alignment success story follow-up calls. So it's $666 value. If you could use that, go to www.soullegacyacademy.com, go into the menu bar, click on the button that says one-on-one sessions with Iona, come over, there's instructions on that page, see if we're a soul match, grab your coupon code, there's an intake form on there. Most people won't take that path of least resistance. Most people won't fill out the intake form, and that's okay. Grab your coupon code. If you have any problems whatsoever, email team@soullegacyacademy.com and my assistant will hook you up. I'd love to personally hold you accountable to show up fully and become the best version of yourself, and surround yourself with legendary light leaders and mentors, blazing the trail and illuminating the pathway for you. So come and join me in the after show for a very nominal fee of $333. That's $3.33, because I never wanted to let anybody be outpriced like I was. So there's me holding my vow. So if you've been asking the universe for a sign, and you probably have, your angels and your guides have guided you here, everything that you've been whispering or you've been screaming is unfolding before you. And I'd love to be part of your journey. So I had my sign. It was time to turn my wounds into wisdom. So I'm dedicating the Soul Legacy TV podcast and radio show to my son, Iona Meade, amazing young man, and my daughter, Mia, and my granddaughter, Brooklyn, and all of my family. I feel so blessed to have the support of my mama, my family, my friends, my loved ones, you, my light leaders, and my soul partner in life, business, and marketing, Barry Borton. I love you, babe. So I'm here paying tribute to those lives that have touched our lives in big ways and small ways, and also to everybody around us, and for those lives yet to come. We only get one life and it's short. Let's make it count. I invite you to celebrate moving up the emotional scale with me. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show down below. I'll put all the links in the show notes for you. Share the aha moments, share the gifts, share the shifts in the real and raw conversations that we will be having in the upcoming seasons. So remember to turn your wounds into wisdom. Don't be a wounded light worker. I dare you to be legend. Hashtag legendary light leaders. I'm sending you so much love and so much light. And thank you for sharing this time with me. Here's to leaving and living your soul legacy. Focus on being in service first. Believe in the downloads. Be blessed on your soul path. Take care. I love you.